So it's been a while since I've done that roof, got it knocked out and finished. Pretty happy with how it's turned out. It's good to finally get it out of the way. I have been continuing on with the truck, doing a few things and trying to do what I can when I can. At the same time, when the weather's been good, like the last few days I've been out riding, making the most of the sunshine, because yeah, we don't know when we'll get it again, sort of thing. But I've also been working on the corolla again, so there's a few things that have needed doing on this thing for quite a while. One of them is the diff. So you can see that there's no axles, no diff center. So what happened was ages ago, with a massive rush to try and get sort of to an event, back when I was an idiot, and well, still am. And what I ended up doing was pulling the diff out and just going over it and remeshing it. And I did it in a rush, didn't do it properly, and it come back to get me because it wasn't long and it wore all the face off the gears, and I didn't pull it out to check it. And anyway, ever since then it's been putting metal through all the oil, all the bearings, everything. Finally bit the bullet, spent the money, got brand new gears, brand new bearings, everything I probably should have done when I first built the diff, but I didn't. And also, I'm not putting it together this time. I've actually dropped it off to my mate Matty Cleary. He's doing me a solid. He's doing that up for me. And yeah, because he's got his own shop, he also does all the four-wheel drive stuff, so he knows Hilux diffs pretty much inside out. It's also got all the tooling, so sometimes it's just easier to drop it off to someone, and that's what I've done. So anyway, so he's doing that, so hopefully he'll get that back to me and all should be good. So cheers to that, mate, if you're watching. Another job that I've been meaning to do is I bought a rollover vent for the tank. So the tank's dropped at the moment. So this is a custom tank that I built. I got the old man to TIG it up for me with his TIG, because it's a fucking good machine. And he's fucking better at it than me. So I built the cradle for it. At the moment it's actually adapted to the original chassis, but it's actually built for when I actually put the new chassis or rear clip in it, when I 4-link it and extend the tubs and whatnot. But I've got too many projects on the go, so it's going to be a little while. But this is a rollover vent valve, and yeah, it's not really any good. It hasn't been doing its job, and it's been causing me grief. So what I'm doing is going back to the old conventional style of just running a hose, looping it and dropping it out. You can't go wrong, and yeah, it's going to work. So the only problem is, because the tank is now under the floor due to rules with wagons having fuel cells for burnouts, drag racing, all that shit, you've either got to have a clear screen or a blast box over the tank, or you've got to have it external. So that's why I've gone under the floor. Plus it opens the back up again, which has been really handy. The only problem is, when you go to put a vent on a tank, you usually try and get it out the top. The only thing is, now you've got a floor in the way. So that's why I did the vent valve, and it was meant to work, but it jams up inside and just gives me grief, so I'm fucking over it. It's out. So what I'm doing now is a good quality silicone hose, just because it's fuel resistant, and well, this stuff is anyway, and easy to work with, easy to put in places. So what I'm doing is, the fitting coming out of the tank, you might be able to see it, it's pointing this way. So what I've done is got an old 180 fitting, taking the end off it, because that's meant to go to a braided hose. So what I'll do is just put a hose clamp on there, pretty easy. So what it'll do is actually cut a U-ey, which will actually help with a bit of slosh problems as well. And then I'll show you under here. So what I want to do actually is, that quarter there, I want to actually run the hose up in there and loop it in there, and then actually send it outside again. So I could enter through here and then send it up to the quarter and come back out. The problem is, with the tank being higher than where the hose has got to run, as soon as the fuel washes out, it'll just sit in the hose. It's not a good idea. So what I'm doing now is, underneath, so you can see that there's this cut out in the chassis. So that's actually worked out really lucky, because what's actually going to happen is, I'm going to send it that way through that little bit of hose, and then you can see that there's a hole in the inner quarter there. Just fluke really. Yeah, there's a hole there. It's meant to have a grommet, but obviously it was just covered over when, I don't know, whoever owned it beforehand, because I haven't actually touched the inner quarters. If you build your tubs right, you don't really need to do your inners, unless they're rusty, of course. So that's going to work out perfect. The only problem is with that is back wheels there, I'm actually getting slap out here, and it's also hitting in underneath. So it wouldn't take long, couple of tyres off, you'd be smashing through this hose in no time. So what I've done is I've actually got a piece of steel tube here. So just thin wall steel tube. So what it's actually going to do, I'll piece him up in here, hopefully get it. So that's what's going to happen. So it feeds through there, feeds through there. So what I've done just now is I've actually built myself a little grommet. So this is it here. So just simple piece of conveyor belt, or just insertion rubber, whatever you want to call it. Cut it to the shape, so I did my little template. Cut it out, and then I wanted a hole that was really snug on the pipe itself. So what I ended up doing was actually getting a bit more of the pipe that I made the first piece out of, and then actually getting the grinder and actually grinding a taper on it, which turns it actually into a sharp cutting edge. Set it on there, hammer it. What that does is pretty much cuts a hole that's going to be really snug on the tube that you're using, and saves having to buy a hole punch just for one size. So that's what I did there, and then all I did was actually got the grinder and just cut a little sort of groove in the middle there. So of course that's where the panel is actually going to sit in, and yeah, that should hold it in there, and then yeah, the pipe goes through, and that's pretty much how you build a grommet to get through there. So a bit of stuffing around to get that done, but that will stop the tyre slap from tearing the hose up, and also gets it higher than the tank, through under the floor, into the quarter. So what's going to happen is it's actually going to loop in the quarter here. It's going to hang up on the two brackets that are in here. Then it's actually going to come out, sneak out here, and hopefully I've got enough. I've actually got a hole in under here, and I'll just poke him out there so it breathes out behind the car. It's not really an issue because there's no flames back here, and this thing doesn't really shoot sparks when it rim bashes, and that's if I get there. And the flames are all coming up the front where the short pipes are, so it's not really an issue. So anyway, that's kind of the old sort of conventional style of doing it without fancy rollover vents and all this sort of bullshit. I've got the 180 fitting on here, so it's cutting the UE, going backwards where it needs to be. But what I've also done is done the fitting up so it actually goes uphill slightly, and that's to help with drawing back of the fuel. Just a single hose clamp, making sure that it's not higher than the filler there, but still high enough to where I can actually do that. Then it runs up inside the pipe there, through the chassis, out the other side into that grommet that I made, and then yeah, out into the quarter here. Also, I put a piece of rubber around the pipe just so it's not rattling inside the chassis. Hopefully keeps it situated as well, because I don't really want to weld it in there, because yeah, as I said, this thing will probably get a rear clip at some time, and there's no point welding shit in there just to cut it out. That's also the reason why I haven't done the bodywork side of things again, because it's there's no point doing all the bodywork and it's still slinging paid off every time I pop a set of tyres. So one day we'll get a respray and an RSN, but as you see, I've got a bit on. So anyway, the other problem I had was the pipe here is pretty flush to the hose that I'm putting through it. So you can push it a fair way and then it goes tight. So what I had to do was, I had to lube my hose up, and you know, when you're out of Vaseline, fucking anything will do. So bit of fucking car wash. The reason I use car wash though is it does keep it nice and lubricated and helps slide the hose all the way through the pipe. Yes, you can muck around and try and clean the pipe out so it's nice and smooth inside, or you can just run this through and yeah, it slips straight through, which is good. I also use this for when I'm putting on my hose fittings and also doing spark plug leads, getting the boots on, because it will dry after a certain time which is what you want. Also, it's not flammable, which is definitely what you want. And also with WD-40 and stuff like that, it doesn't really take long at all, and that sort of starts to dry out and go a bit tacky, especially on rubber and stuff. And then it doesn't really sort of help slip through anything. So just cheap shit car wash. If you got any laying around, helps with sliding things into other things and getting a bit ordinary like that. So that's pretty much job done. Tank's all bolted back in, sides on. Everything's pretty much where it should be. Took a little bit longer just because I also decided to go on underneath and bolt the fuel pump shield back on. So as you can see, it just slides up over the front, and yeah, it just protects the fuel pump just because it's underneath now. If anything makes it between sort of this area and in there, doesn't grab your pump or your lines or anything and rip it to shreds. So that's all back together. So of course it's only got the old Holly Black on there, but fortunately this pump here, so this is a Aeromotive pump, and it's meant to be a really good pump. It was good at the start until it didn't want to work anymore. Yeah, pretty much just diff back together and this thing's ready to rock again. So the corolla out of the way last night, thought I'd come out here today, give you a bit of an update where I'm at with the tow truck. I have kept on it since I finished the roof. I've just been doing a lot of sanding and shit and trying to get ready for primer, and when you see one bit of sanding you've seen it all, so there was no point trying to film any of it. So inside's all sanded back, pretty much prepped up, all the surface rust and that sorted out, all the door jambs and everything, same thing done there. Pillars, cowl panel, firewall. I've just got to go back over it now and just do hand sanding in the corners and stuff that I couldn't get to. What I'm going to do at the moment is I've got all the hole saws, just grabbed a heap from the other shed, but figured out what size I'm going to do. So what I'm actually going to do with that is go in under the rocker here, and I'm actually going to bore a hole that's in line with this pillar and one with this pillar. And then what I'm doing is I've bought a set of floor grommets, so they're 2 to 40 mil hole. Pretty much what I'm going to do is drill the hole, and then that will allow me to empty any shit that builds up in there out, if it ever does get in there. Once I seal all the edges and stuff, there shouldn't be, but there still is a chance that I might have missed something. And you see that that's just what's come out of the gaps between the panels. Same with the rear there. That was all just blown out of here. Underneath's all done. So there you go, you've got a hole there. As you can see, there's that dolly. So I'm gonna have to get that out. I've got an idea. I just gotta make sure it's gonna work. And then yeah, we've also got one at the front there. So anyway, I'm gonna pull these dents out with the dent puller now, get them out, and then also inside the pillars here on each side, just get them sorted out. And then yeah, that should be pretty much right.
You're bred to acquire an invincibility. Let's simplify to fit this civility, then minimize existence with liberty. Let down a line which its instability. It's time to release, time to unwind, time to redirect life from front lines. All I need is one mic and one mind. Isolation helps fight the unkind. When we move forward, a new dawn arrives, where we choose to ignore food for the mind. Who's mortified that we ought to buy a piece of land in order to form a life? Who authorized this competitive normality? Causalities accepting the formalities, core battling impetuous mortality, traumatically misled to store clarity. Yo, heaven forbid I don't be a slave, man. Heaven forbid I go my way, man. Cause I know that it's hard to accept up.
So that's those bits fixed up. Yes, you could leave them, put filler over them, whatnot. Probably wouldn't matter too much in there, but for the time it just took to do that, it's really just worth just grabbing the dent puller, pulling it out, and then it's good to go. So hopefully, maybe, touch wood, by the end of this week, we might have this cabin primer. So we had a small win. So you remember the dolly was down there, in the bottom of the pillar, if you want to call it, back of the cab. Had to come all the way up there, in there. Well, we got it. So yeah, it took a little bit of work, but yeah, figured it out. Pretty much pulled the thing out, so it's happy days. So I don't really want to be cruising around with that in there, so yeah, it's good to get it out. Plus I need it back, so note to self, don't ever do it again, but yeah, if it does happen, at least there's a way to get around it. So I spent a fucking big week since we last checked in. Been a lot of rubbing, sanding, prepping, getting ready for the primer. Still got most of my fingers anyway. So the truck is now pretty much ready for primer, or epoxy primer. So rubbed pretty much most of the way back. It's probably sanded a lot further back than what I was originally planning to do. But the problem is this thing's been painted 10 times in its life. And there was this one coat, which is like a shitty purpley colour. And pretty much as soon as the orbital touched it, it would hard edge, turn shitty. I don't know what sort of paint it is, but it was no good. It had sort of just shit all through it. And you could see that obviously when it was laid on, it was just not good. So also it pretty much just fell off the primer that was underneath it. And obviously the primer hadn't been prepped properly, so had to strip it all the way back to the original white, which is this stuff here. And I'm not too fussed about that because the original white is, yeah, pretty much as honest as you're gonna get besides bare metal. And yeah, it should stay on there and the epoxy will seal over it and hold it in. Also, there's that much bare metal around it, I don't think it's really gonna matter. But yeah, I'm only going this far, not going any further. Yes or no, it's not the right way to do it. I don't give a shit. This isn't the job where it's full bare metal fucking resto. This needs to be done. And yeah, the amount of work that's gone into this thing has definitely sort of exceeded what the original plans were. So that's this thing all wrapped up. Worked out good. I had enough plastic to actually get me through. And it's really handy stuff, so I reckon I'm actually going to try and chase up a few more of those rolls, just because it's really light, easy plastic to work with. It's got tape on one side, which helps, and it folds out, I think it's 4 times. You end up covering a shitload of area, so definitely a lot easier than doing the old school style where you just newspaper everything and hopefully you don't get any overspray past that. In the position I am, where you've painted the plenum before you've done the primer or the top coat, or you want to keep the plenum black and the rest of the body in colour, because yeah, overspray can look pretty shitty, especially if you can't get in there and actually have a decent spray with a gun. So what I ended up doing was actually getting all the old newspaper and stuffing it inside the plenum, and that should pretty much eliminate, I don't know, 80% of what overspray you will get through there. Of course, make sure you don't have it all sticking up and blocking off where you need paint, but yeah, it should keep that nice and black. And yeah, all I'll do is just get a piece of wire, hook it all out when I'm done. Easy done. So yeah, bit of an idea if you sit in this position, especially seeing that these plenums you can't really get into unless you do what I've done here. So yeah, those holes were a really good idea actually. Perler of a day today, can't complain. So it's a good day for painting. Good day off too. Any day off's a good day, but yeah, today the weather's probably where it should have been 2 months ago, but anyway, we finally got it. So paint's all mixed up, just got in the gun, just sitting there for a little bit, let it settle. Did have a little bit of a fail with the first tin. I don't know what the go is there, but I opened the tin up and it's been sealed since I did the bonnet, the inner guards and whatnot. And yeah, I opened it up and it wasn't looking too flash, so racing town. Luckily they had one tin on the shelf, so we're good to go. So yeah, I've mixed the first batch up, pretty much just 4 to 1 as it asks. So in here, everything's right to go. I've prep soled everything again just to make sure it's all clean. It's all taped off, sealed up. So yeah, we should be pretty much right to go. So what I'll do is I'll set up now and we'll get into it.
Exit the site, feel the wrath of the menace. We gunpoint, kidnap, Khemmis, corrupt.
up, youth to premise. Concoct a compound and sound lethal. Backyard lads are better.
Generate the evil. Immaculate rhyme, I got skills, got strength. Like your dad when you're 9, but you're only as strong as the DJ that backs you. With your crew, it's like it's your DJ man or a statue. While my DJ can scratch, mix, produce and can rap too. He cuts a verse like the scar in a tattoo of Book of Matthew and grabs you, rolls up like rubbing tobacco, bro. We come from the shadows, it goes.
Cast the shadows of tomorrow.